Thank you so much for joining us today. So this is something new that we are launching with Maclean's. It's called First Person. And basically, over the course of the next few months, we're going to be appearing on the internet live to talk about really interesting things. And today, we're going to be talking about really interesting pieces of economic nationalism with Sara Cappe, president of the Harris Poll Canada. Sara is a seasoned leader with over 15 years of expertise in market research, specializing in advancing corporate reputation and brand health within the Canadian landscape. Her leadership has been instrumental in driving high impact projects across North America, empowering organizations to make informed decisions that strengthen relationships with key stakeholders. A sought after speaker, Sara has delivered expert presentations at major industry conferences and webinars, sharing her wealth of knowledge in both corporate reputation management and innovative research methodologies. Before joining Harris, Sara held senior leadership positions at Vision Critical, now Alida, and Ipso, where she further honed her expertise in reputation management and polling. Sara, thank you for joining us.
Wonderful to be here. Nice to see you, Jason.
So we're going to be so we're talking about the sentiment of buying local, like people really wanting to support Canadian businesses and the Canadian economy. My first question is very broad. Like over the course of your time studying sentiment and trends, have you ever seen a moment like this before?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I think, especially on a day like today with everything happening in the news, it's, super topical to be talking about Canadian pride, Canadian sentiment. In my years of polling and in market research, I can't remember seeing anything like what we're witnessing right now. I do
Mm,
think that it's really the first movement of its kind in Canada. We're seeing Canadians really rallying together right now with this renewed sense of unity and pride, and it's growing with every passing week. And it's one of the reasons why we partnered, the Harris Poll Canada partnered with Petro-Canada to develop what we called the Live by the Leaf Index. And that's an ongoing study to measure Canadian pride and just the propensity for consumers to purchase Canadian. And what we see in the data is really interesting. It's showing that there's been a shift across the country. We're seeing that Canadians are really making very conscious and thoughtful decisions to stand up for Canada, to support local businesses, and to prioritize our national well-being. So, one of the interesting things that we're doing with Petro-Canada and the Live by the Leaf Index is to measure this sentiment over time. So, we launched the study in February. We've now done, excuse me, we've now done two waves and we repeat kind of a core set of questions so that we can track and see, is sentiment going up or down? And in just those 4 short weeks from doing the first and second wave, we've seen the index really go up from
wow.
785 to 800. So this is really an indicator that Canadian pride right now is surging. So when we do these kind of indices and tracking, we don't usually see such a dramatic change over a short period of time. So I think, going back to your original question, this is really an unprecedented moment for Canada and for Canadians. And we're seeing, what really can be viewed as a systemic shift of feelings of pride across the country.
Wow. So there were all these different kind of defining traits in this study, and the top defining trait was standing up for ourselves, which ranked as number one in terms of a defining trait of Canadian identity. So, how do you see this value reflecting in consumer behavior? And then what was the shift there? Like, what was the defining trait before all of this started happening?
Yeah, so in the first installment of the Live by the Leaf Index, we asked Canadians to look at, what makes them prideful about Canada or about their experience as a Canadian, and looking at different institutions or elements in Canada. And what came out on top in that first installment was around our natural resources, our agriculture, our land,
Wow.
our people,
Okay.
and that's what ranked highest. And then when we went back and ran our second installment a month later in March, we start to see a shift. And it's about standing up for ourselves. We're seeing Canadians really go more on the offense, this like notion of elbows up for our country. It's really shifted our mindset. So we see right now from our March edition, 73% of Canadians surveyed say that standing up for ourselves is really the most important element of
Wow.
our national identity. So when it comes to consumer behavior, Canadians are really turning these values into action. So they're actively choosing Canadian made products. They're showing there's a willingness to pay more, to drive further, to wait longer, to support our country. So
Wow.
it's not just in sentiment, it's also in action. We saw really shifts upward in a lot of these metrics from wave one to wave two. So a few examples include 72% of Canadians in March said they would drive further. And when we asked the same to get a Canadian product, and 64% said they would do so just 3 weeks prior, and 77% said they would wait longer for a Canadian made product. And that went up from 72% back in March. And then 67% said they would pay more for the Canadian
Mm.
product in order to support Canadian businesses. And that went up from 63% from our first wave. So we're seeing these metrics around both sentiment and action go up in a very short period of time. So, I think that it's reflecting a growing determination for Canadians to take back some control of their economic future, and we're starting to support each other like we've never seen before.
So, I mean, you've talked about two waves. How many waves are you doing again? Like you're going to be doing.
So we're definitely going to continue to track the index over time. We're going to be going back into field shortly so that we have another tracking point, and just so that we can continue to monitor these shifts along with Petro-Canada for Canadian consumer behavior.
So, I mean, one of the so I will admit that over the course of this time, I it's not like I spent a bunch of time thinking about how much I care about Canada. Like you take that for granted. I kind of took for granted the fact that I live in such a great country. One of the things the data showed that Canadians feel almost as connected to their country. So 73% feel almost as connected to their country as they do to their families, which is at 79%. So what does that say about our national identity? And that's sort of like, now we're in the realm of family. What does that do in terms of translating into our economic decisions?
Yeah, this question really blew me away when I saw the responses to it, and in a really surprising, like happy way, because I guess it made me feel like at the end of the day, we are all one family as Canadians. So I think we're seeing for the first time really like a deepened connection that's quite collective for Canada as a whole, and this is even surpassing many of like the regional ties that we've had and the municipal ties or the provincial ties. And we see that our connection to Canada is even stronger than our connection to municipality or province or community. So this really signals, a stronger national identity, and really rooted in that idea that we just spoke about before around standing up for each other, and really having each other's backs. I think we're already seeing this sentiment influence economic decisions. And some of the stats that, we just spoke about earlier, but I think we see it as we're, in the grocery stores now and or, doing our shopping of, looking to actively choose the Canadian product and supporting local businesses wherever we can. We're definitely seeing this shine through in the data of Canadians looking to choose Canadian-made products, prioritizing local businesses, and doing so even when it's not super convenient. So, I think that we're in this moment of collective action. It's reshaping what it means to be Canadian in a way that we haven't seen before.
So that takes me. So there was a stat in the study which was 91% of people have strong support for local businesses. One of the things that I always wonder about is like stuff happens in the world. Like stuff happens in the world and then people act a certain way and then it goes away. So my question is like, do you think this trend will persist? Like how sticky do you think this trend will is? And like it's happening right now. We're in the midst of it. And like I want to do something right now. So what can a Canadian do on a day-to-day basis to make sure they act on this strong support?
Yeah, I get this question a lot around is it here to stay? And I do think that this is more than just a trend to support local businesses. I think we're seeing the data show and consumer sentiment show that even after, the threat of tariffs subsides or, there's a change in our political, economic climate, Canadians are still expressing a strong commitment to buy Canadian, to support our homegrown businesses. Canadians are also saying that they want to reduce our reliance on the United States as a trading partner. They're looking for Canada to diversify trading partnerships, to kind of bring down provincial trading barriers as well, so we can support each other and the regional economies. So, in just the 4 short weeks that we've been tracking these metrics, we've seen sentiment grow. And I do strongly suspect that it will continue to climb. And of course, the climate now keeps changing. So it is a little bit hard to predict, what will happen. I think on a day-to-day basis, Canadians can act on this support by, really consciously and thoughtfully seeking out Canadian-made alternatives, whether that's at the grocery store or local retailers. And businesses have an opportunity, and we're seeing them already do this to really showcase Canadian made products, how they're supporting local economies, local jobs. And this is something that Canadians are looking for in the businesses that they're supporting. So, there's that opportunity for businesses right now to really highlight their commitment to support Canadian businesses, Canadian suppliers, Canadian local economies, and then, the broader Canadian economy at large. I think we're seeing, like I said, this moment is really making consumers more thoughtful about their purchasing habits. And it's really kind of making a shift in long established behaviors to prioritize homegrown products. So, just some data points that I can highlight. We see 8 in 10 Canadians say it's important to buy Canadian and support Canadian companies. And like I said, they're already starting to make some active changes to support this behavior. We asked a question of what they're doing in the past week, and we saw that 42% of Canadians are actively substituting a product that they would have bought with a Canadian alternative. And this is up from 34% when we originally asked this
Wow.
question back in February. So we definitely see the sentiment and the actions rising alongside each other. So I think that, this moment, it seems here to stay, and Canadians are really willing and able and already rolling up their sleeves to make it happen.
So I love that. Like that's a great measure. 8 out of 10. Like who are those two people? Like they are incredible. Like it's like I want to find them and I want to ask them. So this idea of like I love this idea of like of pride though, like this strengthening of sort of this national identity of Canada. Like regional pride is a thing too. Like I'm a Torontonian. I love Toronto. I love Ontario. Like people are just like they're really focused on where they live. Um, one of the metrics in the study was that two-thirds of Canadians prioritized Canada as a whole over their province. What did you make of that? I found that to be that was not something that I would think would be the case.
Yeah, we were surprised as well to see this result. And, it's surprising to see it because we've always had kind of regional pride alongside our national unity. But, regional pride is even stronger in provinces like Quebec, where sometimes, your support for your province supersedes the support that you have for your country. And what we're seeing in Quebec right now is really interesting, and I think just speaks to this collective moment at large. So definitely Quebecers still value their province's distinct identity, but half now believe in putting Canada first. And they think that that's more important than prioritizing their own
Wow.
province. So, I think that this moment of national unity is, across our coast or from coast to coast, and Quebec is certainly no exception. We see that across Canada, 63% of Canadians prioritize their country over their province. This is strongest, or the sentiment is strongest in British Columbia. It's
Yeah.
at 74%, and then Ontario at 68%. So I think we're
Wow.
seeing this shift towards national unity even in areas where there's been high regional pride, like Quebec, and there's this commitment to standing together as Canadians, regardless of regional differences.
Wow. So that's so I mean, yeah, those two provinces, I that makes a lot of sense to me because it does feel like as this has progressed, there are some provinces that are starting to feel maybe a little more alienated as we've been going along. So my question now is this idea of demographic differences. Um, so it sounds like in terms of like what you've discovered in the Buy Canadian sentiment, it's highest amongst boomers. What happens to the rest of the demographic profile? Like, does it greatly diminish as audiences get younger?
Yeah, I think what was really interesting is that overall, there is very much a collective sense of national unity, national pride. So this idea of supporting Canadians, supporting local businesses, feeling proud to be Canadian is across the board regionally and across the board demographically. So that in and of itself is interesting. But when we look to see, where is this sentiment strongest and highest, it is with the boomers. And we see, boomers especially are supportive of supporting our local businesses. So, we see 91% of Canadians overall saying that they're trying to support local
Wow.
businesses in their communities, but with boomers, that rises to 97%. So, I think that this
Wow.
generation, traditionally has valued community ties and traditionally has supported homegrown products or supporting homegrown products. They're definitely leading the charge in this movement, but it's not as though they are the only ones. This is definitely felt across the country.
Wow. That's a massive metric.
Really high,
97%.
really
Yeah.
high.
And can you clarify what is a boomer exactly? I
So
should know
boomers would
this.
be, older Canadians.
Okay. So, we touched upon this when we before we started, but it is Liberation Day today. Like all kinds of things are happening this afternoon in the world. Um, and you're going to be doing more of these studies. So, crystal ball, where do you see this going? Like, where do you see this going in the next few months? Where do you see this going over the course of the year? Um, like, what is the trend saying to you right now?
Yeah, definitely. The data is telling us that this heightened sense of Canadian pride is here to stay, that it's more, excuse me, than just a passing moment. And, we are kind of beholden right now to the news cycle with seeing, what's going to happen and what's going to be Canada's response. But I think that, what this has shown us so far is that Canadians, are here to support each other, that we're kind of on that offense rather than defense right now. We see that 92% of Canadians agree that regardless of what happens with the tariffs and, moving forward with the news cycle, they intend to support Canadian companies in the future. And that's gone up by 3
Wow.
percentage points from the first wave in February. So, I think that this has created this kind of shift in our mindset. I think we'll likely see it deepen, or shape our economic decisions going forward. And it's not just going to be, over the next month or two, but, over, the next few years. I think this is definitely here to stay.
Wow. And because like the numbers you're pointing out are these are like massive consensus numbers, like 95, 91, 80. Like these are massive consensus numbers. But the media likes to cover like not consensus. Like there are some provinces that seem to be feeling a little bit more alienated. Um, does that show up in like does that show up in the research as well? Like or is it more unified than it gives the impression, at least on the
Yeah,
news?
it is more unified than not. So
Um,
certainly there's some ups and downs across provinces and across demographics. And we know that Canada is certainly not a uniform country in
yes.
any way. And part of what makes us Canadian is our diversity. But I think that Canadians are really rallying around this idea of needing to support each other and unify in this moment. So, while it's not certainly uniform across the board, there isn't any one province or demographic where the numbers are so significantly lower that,
Hmm.
they're kind of an exception to the story. I think it is definitely a Canadian experience right now.
Yeah, and I think that that's one thing that I think one of the great side effects of all of this has been I'm like really proud of Canada. Like I'm not gonna lie, taking it for granted. I don't sit around all day thinking about how proud I am to be in this country. But just recently, a lot to be thankful for, and I'm very, very happy to be here and to be living here and raising my family here. So it's it doesn't feel like a special time right now. It doesn't feel very special, but I think that as we come together, who knows what's possible for us? I think that that's actually an exciting thing to think about and consider. Um, Sarah, that is it. That is the chat. Thank you so much for
Wonderful.
for taking the time. So for everyone who joined us today, so keep an eye on your inbox. We're going to be popping up on the internet for these quick chats over the course of the next few weeks. Obviously, there's a lot going on in Canada. We're going to be talking about all of it. But Sarah, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everyone else for joining us for this quick half hour. But we'll definitely see you at the next one.